Hello everyone, welcome to our channel Public Cloud Design Tips and Tricks. In this channel, we generally discuss about public cloud design problem statements and their related solution. Today, we are going to discuss about choreography pattern. Now, the problem statement. How to design workflows between services in a microservice-based distributed architecture without central orchestrator. Now, let's try to deep dive into the problem statement. Whenever you are designing multiple microservices, the most important part is how they are interacting with each other. Now in this example, you can see a complex interaction between the services or among the services that leads to a point-to-point complex scenario. That means service A is contacting with B, contacting with C, contacting with D. So all this mess up will be created if you do not prepare a proper way of working or a proper communication channel. For that, there are two solutions which is available in microservice design patterns. One is orchestrator pattern, second is choreography pattern. We will discuss more about choreography pattern. But before that, let's give a quick look into the orchestrator pattern. Why do you need a orchestrator pattern, or why do you need a choreography pattern instead of orchestrator? So when we say orchestrator pattern, that means if you have services, four services, there will be a central orchestrator which will be designed, which will take care of the orchestration of these services. You can think about the service A is controlled by this orchestrator, as well as a business logic will be written when to invoke service A or when to invoke service B or all other services. That means orchestrator is the brain of invocation to call these services. And in this orchestrator, what you will find? You will find a point-to-point connectivity. That means the orchestrator and the services are tightly coupled. And also, you need to provide the domain knowledge of the to the orchestrator so that it know when to invoke which service. And also, when you have orchestrator and you want to add more and more services to orchestrator, then the addition and removal of services will be tough because you are going to write more and more business logic or invocation logic inside the orchestrator. So at a certain point of time, your orchestrator will become more and more complex. To avoid all these challenges, you can go through the choreography pattern. So choreography pattern, we can take an example of asynchronous messaging pattern. That means when you have a request which has been placed by your client, then the request will be arrived in a message broker, and via the message broker, asynchronously, the services which are configured with the message broker will invoke or will executed or will get triggered based on the data which is there in your message broker. That means it is more into a event driven mechanism in an asynchronous mode. In this way, your services can be invoked independently irrespective of your orchestrator. That is the basic, or that is the main concept of choreography pattern. So what you will get as a benefit, you will define a asynchronous communication mechanism. You can bypass point to point connectivity and avoid single point of failure. That means in choreography pattern, if your orchestrator will go down or your business logic inside the orchestrator is not working correctly, then your entire system will be failed. But in the scenario when you have the asynchronous model, in that case, if your service A is getting some problem, then service B and service D and service C and D, they can be invoked. They can do the activities the way they have been configured, or the way they have subscribed to this broker. They can be invoked. That means it is completely independent, and that's where your single point of failure will not be there in this pattern. Now, let's try to understand with an example. So we will take a e-commerce system where a client is taking a login, and once there he is login to the system, that means the event will be triggered as a message inside the queue, and then the placing order service will invoke that particular message or will consume that message and do the operation of order placing independently. And once the order placing is done, then it will give a confirmation to another queue where the order placement is successful. And then the payment processing service will consume that particular event, and again the payment processing invocation will be executed. And once the payment processing is successful, then it will place the successful message inside another queue, and the dispatch service will execute the message which has been delivered inside the queue and do the needful. But here the challenge is when you have a failure case. So you have to make sure when you have such failure inside your service. Just take an example. In your payment processing service, there is a failure which is happening. Then in that case, a failure event has to be triggered and the respective action needs to be taken care. So in this way, you can avoid the single point of failure. Rather than you can get to know, okay, where exactly the problem, and then the respective activities can be initiated. That means your order placement can be reverted, or your dispatch service can be reverted. These are all can be taken care if you handle it event wise in case of any failure. Now let's try to understand when to use choreography pattern. When service configuration are not constant, that means add, remove and update which is continuously happening across your services, in that case you should definitely go ahead with the choreography pattern. When you want to avoid point-to-point connectivity between your orchestrator and your services, in that case you can go ahead with a choreography pattern. You want to avoid single point of failure, that means you want to get rid of the orchestrator failure activities, then in that case you can go ahead with choreography. And you have short-lived and event-driven approach, there you want to trigger your services based on the event, then choreography is your way to go. This is the basic cases where you should use choreography pattern. And when you are designing the choreography pattern, there are few interesting points that you should definitely take care is the failure handling via event or proper design. So you have to make sure you handle your failure because your services are working independently and they are publishing the event to the queue or to the message broker or to the system where the message is getting consumed or it is getting published. So you need to make sure you also publish the failure message as well. That means if a failure is happening, that means you have to make sure you trigger an event which depict, okay, there is a failure in this service and you have to do the needful. Second, when you are having number of services increases, then workflow management is also tough. That in that case, the flow which is there in your message broker, which will be very tough because the traceability across the services, that means if one service is getting failed, then it is very difficult to trace where exactly the problem is happening. So you have to make sure you ensure that in your design, you make a traceability ID or kind of stuff where you can trace it easily. Then the third point, orchestrator manages resiliency centrally, whereas choreography pattern manages it in several levels. That means each service level, it handles the resiliency. Whereas in orchestrator pattern, your resiliency will be handled in the orchestrator level. So these are all cases that you should definitely consider when you are designing the choreography pattern or orchestrator pattern. I have gathered all this information by following Microsoft link and also few other links. You can find those links inside the comment section of this video. If you like the video, then don't forget to subscribe our channel and also share it with your friends so that you can share the knowledge and get more and more knowledge with your mind. Thanks a lot for listening. Thank you.